Same old game.
Here's Johnny. You're gonna need a bigger boat. So serious. Roll out.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to this podcast review for August 2nd, 2026, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Megan Kearns.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody, for a conversation on a movie that I am very excited to dig into. This is Gregg Araki's latest film, his new film in 12 years, Megan.
Wow.
Can you believe that it's been 12 years between I Want Your Sex, his latest film, and his last film, White Bird in a Blizzard, which came out in 2014.
It's wild.
Pretty wild. That was actually the first film of his that I saw.
Oh.
Because 2014 was the second year that we had been doing In Session Film. So it's one of those movies that we actually covered in real time. And it was my first experience with him. I had never really seen any of his other films. I had caught up with Mysterious Skin and Splendor in the following years, and I really came to love those two. And like, I think I liked White Bird in a Blizzard. I don't think I've seen the film since 2014, but I was very fascinated by it at the time. And just generally, he's become a filmmaker that I'm compelled by. I still need to see a bunch of his other movies, especially from the mid to early 90s. I haven't seen any of those. But of those I have seen, I'm pretty high on Gregg Araki. How do you feel about him as a director?
The only one of his films that I've seen is Mysterious Skin, which,
Fair enough.
That's a movie.
That's a wild one. Yeah,
that
that's
is a
wild
movie.
one.
Yeah. So it's an intense movie. And if you know, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I definitely need to dig into his filmography because there's so many others like Doom Generation and White Bird in a Blizzard, because one of my friends loves that movie and is probably the staunchest, not just defender of that movie, but champion of that movie. So I definitely need to see more of his work.
I would love to go back and see it again. As I noted, I was pretty fascinated by it at the time, partially because it stars Shailene Woodley, who, of course, was doing the Divergent movie simultaneously. And
Whiplash, like actor Whiplash.
Big time Whiplash. We see Woodley in a whole different light in White Bird in a Blizzard
Yeah, you can
that
only
we
imagine.
haven't seen before or since, really. So, yeah, it was pretty fascinating. And that's a movie I would definitely love to go and revisit. Mysterious Skin, though, is one of my favorite films from 2004 or 5, whenever that came out. I loved it. I really went for that film quite a bit. So, yeah, I mean, obviously he's known for his sex-positive, provocative characters and themes of identity, and certainly comes through quite vividly in the films that I have seen. And yeah, I'm really curious to go and check out his other work from the 90s for sure. But yeah, it's crazy. It's been 12 years since his last movie, but here we are. I Want Your Sex. Are we ready to dig into this one?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. Let's talk about it. I Want Your Sex, directed by Gregg Araki. It stars Olivia Wilde. What a year she is having. Good gracious.
Absolutely.
Olivia Wilde, Cooper Hoffman, Mason Gooding, Chase Sue Wonders, Johnny Knoxville, Margaret Cho, Charlie XS, Daveed Diggs, and others that come and go throughout the movie. If you're not familiar with I Want Your Sex, it is about a character named Elliot who lands a job for Erica Tracy as her sexual muse. All right, Megan, what did you think about I Want Your Sex?
I think, so Olivia Wilde, you said what a year she's having.
Yeah.
I think she is incredible in this. And that made her fantastic performance that is so captivating and magnetic just made me enjoy this movie so much, along with the vivid color palette in the production design, along with Cooper Hoffman's performance. This might be my favorite Cooper Hoffman performance.
Yeah.
And also my favorite Olivia Wilde performance. And this is just scathing and it is compelling. What it has to say about sex and sexuality and consent and bondage and kink, I think is really compelling. And I'm so excited to dig into this more. What I also love about this is kind of the thriller component that very much kicks off in a very Sunset Boulevard way.
It's hard not to think about Sunset Boulevard.
Right? Yeah. So much so.
Yeah.
Like, it's very clear that's what was being channeled here. And I love that. But if you think about Erica, Olivia Wilde's character, as the Norma Desmond, it's so fascinating. Like, there's so many layers to it. So I just think this is kind of a juicy, fascinating film. And I was riveted. So yeah, I think this is, I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, it is really quite fascinating. I had the best time with this movie.
Yes.
It is very funny and diverting. It goes to some deranged places, but I think also is having a compelling conversation about sex and sexuality in the modern age. It's also interesting too, because while we noted we haven't seen all of Araki's films, this is his most accessible, his most commercial that I've seen. And I've heard other critics offer similar sentiments, so I know that I'm not crazy by saying those words. And part of what's interesting about how he opens this film, maybe purposefully inviting us into his world in an accessible way, is that it is an inversion of Sunset Boulevard with a dead person in the pool, we'll say, and another character coming out in lingerie, a bit bloodied. And that's the opening of the film, which we know we're going to circle back to before we flash back to 9 weeks prior. And from there, as it thrust us into the world of Elliot and Erica, yeah, it is quite fascinating. And you're right, there's a lot here on power and consent, on validation. There's certainly some things to say about art and celebrity, sex in the modern era for sure. And I do think there's a fascinating duality with this film. I do think Araki is wanting to explore how society has become overly cautious to some degree, but at the same time, sexual liberation doesn't excuse exploitation.
Right.
And that being the beating heart of this film, I think, is quite riveting. But it's also doing it in a very different way than I think I would have expected if this film came out 15, 20 years ago. If he followed this up with White Bird and a Blizzard 2 years later, I think this would have been a very different movie. But I think there's something about how things have evolved over the last 12 years that has provoked that conversation from a very different angle. And so like where that goes here, and of course it's very playful in having this conversation, but also sincere at the same time. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it's really fun. And yeah, it's some of the most fun I've had at the theaters this year for sure.
I love that because it is such a weird, wacky movie, which is in addition to its subject matter, just the way it unfolds, which I love. And I love that you mentioned the 9 weeks because I'm going to be a stickler. It's 9.5 because
9.5 weeks.
No,
yes.
but the reason I say that is because it is, of course, acknowledging 9.5 weeks, the erotic thriller, you know, with Kathleen Turner and Mickey Rourke. Yeah. So I love that. Like right away, it's like already, you know, being playful and giving a nod to eroticism. So I
Sure.
kind of love that, like, it's coming right out of the gate, which I think is
Yeah.
great. And it's showing those, Hollywood illusions, which I think is so, so fun. But yeah, I think this is fascinating. I absolutely agree with you about what you're saying about how it's in conversation with kind of a regressive, maybe prudish society. And because I've seen interviews with Gregg Araki where he's talked about how I don't know if he's said he was fascinated by, concerned by, but he spoke on how younger generations kind of shy away from wanting like sex scenes in films, for instance.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
his films are so full of sex. Like they're, it's
Yeah.
bold, it's unabashed as it should be. And so I think that is really fascinating. And I think it is incredibly compelling that we're having that conversation in this film with a dom who is an artist and uses sexuality in her work and very much is so open about her own sexuality and her own queerness and fluidity and about BDSM and kink. And yet she is absolutely exploitative and she is absolutely horrible when it comes to boundaries and consent,
Yeah.
which if you know anything about kink and BDSM, in theory, of course, it all revolves around consent. It all revolves
Yeah.
around boundaries and adhering to those boundaries. And that's the safety within those playful roles, is that you have those protections with safe
Yeah.
words and consent and everything. And so I love that it's having that conversation, as well as in regards to the art world and what does that mean and what is art and what are the power dynamics of art and what is its role in society and what is the role of sex in society in an
Yeah.
individual as well as in a societal way. So I agree with you. There's so clearly so much on Gregg Araki's mind that is being displayed here in
Yeah.
this film.
And I think that's what's so interesting about his filmmaking and what he chooses to show us and what he doesn't, because it does invoke this meta conversation to be had about what he does here in the context of Gregg Araki, because this is accessible almost primarily because it is one of his safest, I don't know if that's the right word, but this depicts the least nudity of any of his movies that I've seen. And it's not even close.
Yeah, that's a fair
So it's
point.
like he's wanting to explore sexuality, but do it in a way where Gen Z won't be offended that a movie is talking about sex, even though the movie is called I Want Your Sex.
Right,
And it doesn't
right.
hold back from showing us the BDSM. We certainly see it, even if done playfully and in a diverting way. It is very much there. And Olivia Wilde in particular, certainly showing off some vulnerability, I'll say, early on. So it's not as if he's completely shy, but compared to his other work, this
Yes.
might as well been directed by someone doing something PG. And so it's like he's wanting to have this conversation about how perhaps a certain demographic feels prudish around sexuality, like the discussion of sexuality and the depiction of it in movies especially, but wanting to have a conversation about sexual liberation and, having some sort of valid response to your sexuality. And of course, the power dynamic at play. I mean,
yes.
Elliot is an employee of Erica. So there is a power imbalance. And we're told early on that he really needs this job. He has no money. This is all that he really has. So there is a dependency on it. And because Erica is not only beautiful, but she's essentially an art celebrity. So there's, of course, going to be a level of fantasy around wanting to be around this person, perhaps even sexually, and the film certainly evokes that as well in an incredible moment. It wants to have this conversation about kink and consent, Elliot's involvement in it. And as he's talking to the police officers, he is very open about how obsessed he becomes with Erica, despite some of the things that she was asking him to do. And from an outsider perspective, it probably does come off as taboo, but he's seemingly consenting to it until there's a reveal later on that changes that, we can say. And so, yeah, I mean, that whole dynamic, it's pretty engrossing what Araki is wanting to explore and say here, and doing it through that kind of in the meta way of making this accessible, which it's just an element to this film I find fascinating.
I couldn't agree more, because when I was in the theater and I saw this with a packed audience, and I'm looking around and there's so many older couples, and I was like, this is the date movie that they picked. And I'm like, do they think it's some kind of like rom-com? And I was guaranteeing, I was like, I don't think they know what they're in for. I think that's what they thought. And there are going to be walkouts, considering, the level of BDSM and kink. And, people are just going to be like, this movie's crazy. This movie's not for me. And no one walked out. And it sure seems like people were riveted. Whether they enjoyed it or not, I have no idea. But they were captivated and people laughed. So, that was great. So I do think, and granted, that is just very anecdotal, but I do think you're right that there is an accessibility here to it. It feels almost mainstream, which feels wild to say, considering this is not a mainstream film in any way, especially considering the fantasy elements, like the animation that happens in conjunction with the film. It kind of reminded me in like a Better Off Dead kind of way, in that we're seeing Elliot's like fantasies come to life. And so this isn't a mainstream film. It's very much weird. It's very much sexual and rooted in that, but yet it does feel like this mainstream accessibility in the way that it's approaching these topics, which is really fascinating.
No, it is absolutely fascinating. I had a similar experience. My theater, of course, it was in one of the smaller theaters because Spider-Man rules the day.
Yes.
But it was sold out. There was an empty seat. It was an interesting dynamic in the sense that I'm fairly certain it was a whole bunch of couples, and then it was just me there by myself.
Yes, same. I'm like, yep, I'm here by myself with all these couples.
That's me here by myself. And I mean, no one walked out. And I don't know. It's an interesting discussion, right? Because if you're buying a ticket to a movie called I Want Your Sex and you see the poster, I think you kind of know what you're getting into. But at the same time, it could simply be off-putting and taboo to some, especially given how provocative it is in places. I do think what's also interesting, aside from it being commercial, in the sense of, okay, we're exploring taboo topics in a way that people can digest. Certainly, when you compare this to other Araki films, that is very, very much the case. So you can have a conversation with someone about it. But also, it is interesting when you dissect Elliot further, how there's more than just the sexuality to it. I think part of what makes Elliot an interesting character is how, and I say this as a compliment, but like how banal the character is. He's kind of directionless. There's no confidence to the character. He's kind of adrift, especially emotionally speaking. And he's stuck in this lifeless relationship that he doesn't really want to be in. And he's afraid to admit that early on when he's talking to, what was it, the Mason Gooding character? What was his character? Zap? When he's talking to Zap. I was like, yeah, I got this. You know, he's studying a lot, and he even
hot.
says, she's hot, and he says, I forget the phrasing, but at one point he's like, it's kind of weird that we're together because she's hot and she's going to be this doctor and I don't know what I'm doing with my life.
Yes.
Like he even admits that it's a relationship that shouldn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is a lifeless relationship. And so when he gets this opportunity to be with Erica, he jumps at it, and you start to wonder if it's more than just the fantasy element of it, because this is a character looking for purpose, perhaps looking for identity, for approval, for validation. And while those things aren't necessarily on the surface as much, it does come to the fray in a big way, especially near the end of the film. I think one of the more grounded, poignant scenes here is the threesome sequence.
Yes.
Which is really great. And we can certainly talk about Apple and her perspective here in a moment, because that is pretty devastating. But for Elliot, since we're talking about Elliot, I think what's interesting about the moment is that he is initially tied up and blindfolded. And this is off the heels of him already experiencing all of this other BDSM with Erica when it was just the two of them, and he had no problem with any of it whatsoever. And he was willing to admit that to the police officers. We don't just see it. He admits that to the police officers as well. But here comes a moment where he's tied up and he's blindfolded, and all of a sudden he doesn't want to be distant. He doesn't want to be away from the action. He feels like he's desperate to be in the middle of it. And at that point, it's more than just the sexuality. This is where his identity is becoming fractured right in front of his eyes. Or I guess with his eyes closed, because he's blindfolded after all. But it's
that is true.
Right there. And I find, like, from an emotional perspective, from when talking about Elliot, I found his reaction to that really interesting in terms of demonstrating that this really has nothing to do with sex or sexuality. Of course, that's part of it, but it's certainly much more than that, when he was willing to, like, he was not going to sit there quiet, even though the Dom was asking him to. The game was over for him at that point.
Right. And absolutely it should have been, because the minute he was uncomfortable, the minute anyone is uncomfortable in whatever sexual act it is, then it stops, and it should. And the fact that much earlier in the film, when she says, well, you can use the safe word if you're uncomfortable. And I think it's when she's trying to do anal with him. I'm sorry, this conversation is great. Like, when she's got the dildo and she's trying to do anal with him,
it's that kind of movie. I'm sorry.
Right. Exactly. And, and it might not be that scene. It might be another one, but there's one where I think it's that one. And she's telling him to, just relax, just breathe. And he's like, well, we don't have a safe word. And she's like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And the fact that she's completely glossing over the safe word, which is something that is just so basic, and that I would argue any couple or group should have, whether you're into BDSM or kink, you should have a safe word. It really should be that way, where you just take a moment and then are like, oh, we have to stop. We have to stop. And so the fact that she glosses over that early on, I mean, it's such a, there's so many red flags along the way, of course. So that the fact that the pinnacle comes in this threesome, and that he is asserting himself, and when he's been so passive all along, and not just the fact that he's been a sub the whole time, but the fact that he has been passive, like you said, like he's very directionless. He's very, he's just drifting along. He doesn't speak up in regards to his girlfriend. He doesn't really speak up much in regards to anything else, but yet he is so nice. Well, I say he's nice. He's actually not, because of the fact he's cheating on his girlfriend and he's dishonest. But aside from that, he's very eager to please. He's, he wants to be nice, and he wants to get approval and attention. But you're absolutely right in that in this threesome moment, he's had enough. His threshold has been crossed. He's reached his limit. That limit has been breached, and he's not going to be quiet about it, and nor should he. Absolutely, that should have stopped the minute he was uncomfortable. So it's really fascinating the way it plays out.
Yeah. and that's a fascinating perspective because honestly, I wasn't even thinking about it from that lens as much as I was thinking of it in terms of his emotionality or his identity. But that's interesting because even in that moment early on when you're talking about the dildo, and even though there's red flags in that scene for all those reasons, not having a safe word, not knowing what the safe word is, he still lets her do it.
Yes.
And
Well,
seemingly
yes.
enjoys it.
Yes.
And so like he's still willing to, even if he's uncomfortable, let Erica be the dom, and he's going to play his role, and he's having a great time again. And that's something we see that Araki shows us, but then it is regurgitated later when he tells the police officers that I loved that. I had a great time. I was obsessed with Erica. And as the film goes, we do see that obsession manifest. I just find it fascinating that when we get to the threesome moment, his reaction to it is, I can no longer sit in the back. Like there's something about his identity, and there's something about not being a part of it, like him being distant and simply hearing Erica and Apple have a great time, that he cannot be a part of it. Like it releases something new in him that where he just isn't willing to be the sub anymore. And Erica is somewhat relents and is like, fine, you can come over here and play. And then that really, causes a whole bunch of chaos because now he's hurting Apple's feelings, and maybe we could transition to that as well. But yeah, I find it interesting that it becomes more of a moment of emotion than anything else. And it's like his purpose his purpose has been fractured. This newfound identity has been fractured. Maybe it's been a facade this whole time. And the moment becomes about that, and less so the sexuality of it. Although it is a big part of it still, especially from Apple's perspective, when she realizes that she has been invited, but kind of in a bad faith kind of way. Right.
Well, as the quintessential icon from Sex and the City, Samantha Jones, said, who we are in bed is who we are in life. So it definitely carries over into his life. But it is really, I'm really intrigued as to what it is about not being in the action that was the tipping point for him, because he's clearly okay not being with Erica, because when she tells him, hey, you're going to go to my friend's house and you're going to have sex with her, and he's like, oh, okay, sure. And then later on, it doesn't happen, but he says, hey, you can pass me around to all your friends. Yeah. And she's like, no, we're not going to do that, later, or not now, or whatever. And so it's fascinating because he's like, okay, he's fine with that, or at least at that time he was, but either now he's no longer fine, or he isn't fine, or he thought he would be okay but he's not okay. And so he does want to be part of that action. I do think that's fascinating. Is it because Apple was there and Apple's his best friend roommate? Is it because he wanted more from Erica? Because as the film goes on, he talks about do you want kids? Do you want to get married? And it's like, wait, you're in this, strictly sex relationship, and yet you're thinking about these other things too. So maybe it is that he has this fantasy life that is very much into the kink element, but then he also wants to integrate that into something more conventional or traditional. And I think that's a really intriguing thing. So it's like, is it that's the tipping point? Is it that Apple's there? Is it that he's not involved, that he's, the voyeur and he doesn't want to be the voyeur? It's really,
I think it's that he's not involved. He's obsessed with Erica for all those reasons beyond just the sexuality, and he can't stomach someone else being in his position. And so he needs to be involved. Because he does kind of come off as if he's not interested in Apple, and it's supposed to be a threesome, and she recognizes that he has no interest in her, in Apple.
Right.
which is why she responds devastated the way she does. And it is pretty heartbreaking from her perspective. But I think that's exactly it. He sees that someone else is taking his spot and he needs that pedestal. Like that's his validation. That's what his identity is. And the moment that's taken away, even by his best friend, he just can't stomach it anymore.
Yeah, it's funny though because he should know he's not the only one because Daveed Diggs's character says
Yes,
that to him.
tells him.
You're not the only one.
Yeah.
You will not. You're not the first. You won't be the last.
Exactly.
And yet he, blocks it out or doesn't acknowledge it. Whatever. And and then either that or he's like, oh, I'm fine. And maybe that's what he's telling himself. But then you're right. When it's face to face with him or blindfold to face, as it were, he's like, no, this is too much because he is so entranced by Erica. I mean, listen, she's a magnetic character. She is fascinating. I was riveted every time Olivia Wilde was on screen. I could not look away. And I don't just mean like the look because yes, of course, she's a conventionally attractive woman. But I mean, there's something about her presence as this character that is so commanding that I just loved.
No, I completely agree. I love how provocative the character is.
Yes.
It's interesting how she almost commands this cult-like devotion from those that work for her.
Yes.
Which is interesting. Aside from maybe the Daveed Diggs character of Victor, who does push back against her a few different times. But generally, Erica uses her artistry, her celebrity, her sexuality and power. All of that is interchangeable for Erica. And it comes through in incredible ways in Olivia Wilde's performance. She's so good at tapping into that. And I think that's what makes Elliot's response to her so fascinating because it somewhat taps into this idea of celebrity worship.
Yes.
And admittedly, that's not something that, like, I am so foreign to that idea. Like, I just do not get into celebrity culture all that much. But I recognize I am in a huge minority. Like, our society is obsessed with celebrity culture.
Yes.
And I don't get it. I really don't get it. But this is a film that is wanting to explore that in this fascinating erotic way. But yeah, like how the film kind of navigates celebrity and that power dynamic to essentially exploit Elliot without getting into too many details, I guess, for those that haven't seen this film. But there's a reveal near the end of the film when we realize that Erica and Elliot's relationship, there was always a purpose to it. There was a reason for everything that Erica did. And when Elliot finds out that so many of their interactions was a facade of sorts, I mean, you can imagine how someone would react when they find out that information. There is a blow up of sorts, and it leads to this incredible ending with all of these twists and turns that I don't know if you see coming. And I think that's part of the fun here too, is Gregg Araki is toying with genre and tropes in this interesting way. So it's like he's wanting to embrace and subvert genre at the same time while also having his sexual sensibilities all over this film, which just makes it all the more fun. And I think that's why it's like you don't necessarily know where things are going to go. And it just makes it for a fun experience.
I agree. And yeah, that ending is wild. Where it does go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do find it interesting the way he plays with the genre and expectations. And I also think there's something though that I think is fascinating, but also I don't know. I keep coming back to Apple as a character because to me, she is so coded as queer from the jump, like right from the
Yeah.
start. I'm like, oh, this is a queer character. And then even Erica says that to her. She's like, oh, you're gay. And she's like, no, no.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, okay. Like she doesn't even
Yeah.
believe her.
Yeah.
And then you have that moment, that heartbreaking moment where she realizes that Elliot does not want her. And then it's like, is she upset by that because she wants him? Is she just upset by that because of that rejection? Or is she upset by that because she has to grapple with the fact that she is queer and she doesn't know or isn't ready to come out? Like there's so many really compelling, fascinating things because you have Zap. I'm sorry, that name is absurd. You have Zap, who is a gay man. And then you have Erica, who doesn't label herself, but is very clearly fluid. And you have Elliot, who also seems to be fluid too in some capacity or potential capacity. And so it is fascinating to me that for a film that, you know, is by a queer filmmaker and there is so much sexuality and there is so much queerness baked into it, Apple to me is the fascinating piece of that isn't where it's not fully explored. But I think that makes it makes me wonder, is it because of that it was written, because I know it was co-written also by Kaylee Sciartino, but I'm like, is it because it's written and directed by a queer man, or is the fact that her queerness is not fully explored part of the point? Like I just think there's so many interesting layers to this.
Well, and that is a question mark I do have with the movie as well, because there's that moment when Erica comes onto her and they have a kiss there, and she brings up the idea of her being queer as you're talking about. And then they go upstairs. They have the moment we talked about earlier where Elliot just can't stand being in the back. And so when he interrupts, Apple gets really upset and doesn't understand why he wouldn't want to be with her as well.
Right.
And then she disappears from the movie.
Yes. She's just gone.
She's just gone. So there really is no closure to it. And I wonder if part of that is because of how we're supposed to feel about Elliot. I do think Elliot is a nuanced character in the sense that, yes, he is likable. He's fun at times. But as I noted, he is purposefully banal and vanilla because this is a character with no confidence. He's adrift, as we talked about earlier. He's directionless. He is meant to represent the person that is bland, that has no sexual journey or experience. And that's a conversation that Elliot and Erica have a couple of times throughout the film of Elliot's generation having this bored sexual lifestyle.
Yes.
When you're supposed to be in your sexual prime, going out there and experimenting and doing all of these fun things. So there is an element to Elliot that is meant to be vanilla. Also, he's kind of dumb. Like there's just elements at play here where it feels like it should be obvious what's happening and he just doesn't understand. And I think part of that is Araki playing with trope and genre and everything we mentioned earlier. And when it comes to Apple, I think I wonder if that's part of it, because he doesn't, like, there's no scene where he apologizes to her. Like as soon as that threesome encounter is over, they take an uncomfortable cab ride back to their apartment. Apple gets out of the car immediately and runs back into the apartment building. And the next thing we see, well, I guess there's that moment of Elliot going to his girlfriend's house to apologize. But the way that's edited, you wonder if that's a dream or if that actually happened. I don't know. It's funny regardless how that plays out. But he wakes up in his bed and he just packs up all of his stuff and he leaves to go to Zap's place. Like there's no moment, there's no interaction between the two of them. There's no apology, no nothing. So like there is an element of, well, Elliot he's vanilla and kind of a dick at times too.
Oh, totally. He's horrible.
Yes. And I kind of wonder if that's just the film wanting to give the character nuance, or maybe that's just a missed opportunity for the film to go further there. I don't know.
Yeah, I do. It's funny. I feel both ways, and I feel like both ways kind of work. I do wish we'd gotten more of Apple, and I know there's so much flippancy in this film. There's so and especially in the way Erica communicates, and she talks about the woke police, and just brushes it off and your prudish generation, and everything is just a joke. Everything is so flippant to her. Everything there's such an irreverency to everything about her, and even the way she talks to clients, like potential buyers of her art, or even her friends at her show, when when two of her friends ask when she has the bubblegum vagina art, and they're like, oh, what's this about? And because they're like, because they're two gay men, and they're like, why is there bubblegum vagina? And she's like, well, it's blah, 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 blah. And she's like, it's whatever really makes me money. And that's what I care about. And so it is so fascinating. Yeah. And I know I keep using the word fascinating, but this really is, there's so much to dig into with this. But there is this notion of just this fluidity with power, in that, whether power is coming through sex, whether it's coming through money, whether it's coming through, social status or something else. And there is there's simplicity with some of the elements with Elliot and with Erica, but there's also layers of complexity too. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy, but I feel like Apple really is a missed opportunity. Like, I would have liked just a little bit more, but then again, this is not that movie, and this movie is very much, irreverent and flippant about all of its topics and in the way it is depicted. So perhaps the scene of Apple, how vulnerable she is, and how she's like freaking out and having a break there, perhaps that is the level of complexity that Gregg Araki was comfortable having from that character, So.
Yeah, perhaps. I guess it's hard to say without talking to him about it. Maybe there are interviews out there. I don't know. I would certainly be curious to hear more, but it does feel maybe like a missed opportunity to do more, unless the idea is to give some nuance to Elliot and remove some of those vanilla qualities and make him a bit more prickly. If that is the goal, then I think the film succeeds in that regard. Because he's kind of an asshole, and we are not necessarily rooting for him for chunks of this movie. I don't know if we really align with him again until we get to the art show and we realize how he's been exploited this whole time, and then our allegiances might shift there a little bit. So that's somewhat how I read it. I'm with you in the sense that I wanted more of Apple 2, or perhaps some closure. But I don't think it doesn't work in the sense that Elliot is this new character with this fractured identity now, that, where his relationship with Erica is dissolving even before you get to the art show. He's already kind of like, this isn't really working, and he's frustrated. And then he's asked to go to the bathroom and she doesn't show up. And that only heightens that further. And then comes the major reveal. And it's also interesting, you were talking about Erica and how flippant she is, and talking to clients about how she doesn't really care about any of this art as long as it makes her money. Right. I think what's really funny about that is that, like, after she has those interactions with those clients, Victor introduces her to this other character, and I can't remember what the character is. And she's like, I like your stuff, except the new stuff. It's kind of art, shallow. Yes. Yeah, like she's like an art critic or director or something.
I think she's a director of MoMA, but yes.
And then Erica's reaction is like to get indignant about it.
Yes.
It's like, you just said that you didn't care about any of this shit.
Because she's a
And now you're being
liar.
criticized. Yeah. And all of a sudden, and then, we see the reaction to the art show afterwards. I'll say vaguely without getting into sports. It's like, well, what did you expect was going to happen? Like, you didn't put any energy or time or effort into this. And of course it turned out the way that it did. So, but it's, those type of people, that's often how that goes. Like, they're no sense of awareness, but that is Erica all the way back to the beginning when you talked about her interaction with Elliot and not really having a safe word and not knowing if she's doing things by the book because the woke police will be after her. Like, she just has her own way of doing, like, she doesn't really care about setting boundaries or like, there's no self-awareness to the character. And maybe that's part of the celebrity culture commentary that's happening here too. I don't know. That's certainly what makes the character fun, though, for sure.
Yes. I mean, she's so outrageous, and you never know exactly what she's going to do, which that spontaneity is fascinating and compelling to watch. But something else that I love is that I completely forgot what I was going to say. So.
Okay.
I know what it was. I know what it was now. I got it again. But something else I love is that I know in the beginning we talked about how it clearly is paying homage to Sunset Boulevard and thinking about Norma Desmond as kind of the mirror to her, to Erica. Sure. I love that because obviously that's a movie so much about obsession and about oh, hello. My cat just decided to come and say hello. It's such a movie that is about obsession and fame and what that does to a person. And I love that thinking about Norma Desmond as kind of a North Star to Erica. That's what she's fixated on. She's fixated on the attention, very much like Elliot is too. Like, she wants the approval. She wants the attention. She says she doesn't. She says she doesn't care. She's just doing it for the money, but she's a liar and she really does care. And she wants the adulation and the approval from the art world and from others. Because when she's in that interview with Elliot right in the beginning of the film, and she's like, why do you want to work for me? And she's on her phone, she's not paying attention. And the minute he says, I'm a huge fan of your work, and he says it with such genuine enthusiasm, she immediately perks up and she's like, old or new work. Yeah. And so clearly she wants that attention too, which I think ties in and dovetails into sexuality and wanting to be desired, and also ties into Apple wanting to be desired and not rejected. And I think it all works beautifully.
And that's a big part of the film. That's maybe the nucleus of it, right? Because you could argue the same thing for Erica, Elliot, and Apple. They just want to be desired on some level. Yes. And what's interesting about all three characters is that when that is ripped away from them, they become emotionally devastated.
Yes. And unglued, unmoored. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's quite fascinating. And I do love how Araki navigates that tonally because, again, the film is a riot. There is a lot of fun to be had here, but those poignant moments do come through very well simultaneously. And it's a great time. Before we get out of here, I do want to note Charlie XCX and her performance here as Minerva.
She's great.
She's very, very good. Very good. Admittedly, I feel like I haven't seen her in a ton of things. I really need to see that. Not really a documentary. What would you call that? Like that, the moment, I think it's called that.
Oh, yes.
Like
I thought you were talking about a rupture.
I don't know if there's a film of hers that I've because I know she's done a lot lately, but I haven't. I guess she's got like one or two scenes in Faces of Death. That's
yes, she does.
Really a full a rupture. I have not seen. The Moment I have not seen.
No, I haven't seen those either.
I'm looking at some of her filmography. Like, this is like the first real performance of hers that I've seen. I guess that a lot of words to say that. And I was admittedly really impressed by her work here. She is fantastic.
Yeah, she's great.
I love it because one, there's a level of, the character is constantly studying and working, and so she's fully disconnected from Elliot and everything that's going on in that relationship. And I love the banality that she brings to the character in that regard, but also there's that moment when she's having sex with Elliot and he's urging her to climax with him at the same time. And of course, she has no interest and she has to fake it. And the way she taps into that to kind of fake that whole moment is so funny. It's so good.
But it just shows how delusional he is, that he has no idea about pleasing a woman or anything. Like,
yeah,
it's so clear.
He has no clue what's going on. Yes.
No.
But it was so funny. That whole moment was great. And she makes it. Like that whole moment it works because of her performance there. It's incredible. Do you have any other final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I have said up and down that I'm obsessed with Olivia Wilde's performance, and I think it's stupendous and spectacular. I also think that Chase Sui Wonders as Apple is really great.
She's fantastic.
Yeah,
really
I've seen her in other things, but this might be my favorite performance. So I think it's my favorite performance from almost everyone in the cast, except for Daveed Diggs. He's great in so many things. But yeah, it's just kind of incredible to watch that there are so many of my favorite performances from people in this film. So yeah, this was a fascinating one. It's there's so much to dig into. It is extremely funny too, and it is just a pleasure to watch a film embrace color and through its costuming and through its production design. So I enjoyed it on a multitude of levels. I think this was a great film.
Yeah, I had a great time as well. My only final thought here, and this is a question I wanted to pose to you as well.
Ooh.
Because I read this on a few Letterboxd reviews, and I was curious if you had a thought on this, because I would say the biggest criticism I've read for this film is how it depicts its gay supporting characters, and that some of them, particularly Zap and Victor, exist mostly to invoke stereotype. And that could come off a bit shallow for some. I was curious how you felt about that.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with that.
Okay.
I think the fact that it is directed and co-written by a gay man, I don't want to say inoculates it from criticism, because it certainly does not. But I think if it was a straight person who directed it, there would be potentially an even bigger conversation about how offensive those depictions are. Yeah, no, it is, because it's strange to me that because as a queer woman, I'm coming in focusing on the queer women depictions, and they're problematic. But then you're absolutely right that the gay men are also problematic in their kind of trope-filled roles. So yeah, I think that's a very, very pointed and fair criticism.
I think that's very fair as well, which is why I was curious to hear what you had to say about it. And it is interesting because, this is coming from a queer filmmaker who's done phenomenal work before, of course. And maybe it just kind of points back to what we said earlier, in that he was trying to make this as accessible as possible. So maybe it's just the meta-ness of all of this. Maybe. Where he wants to have a conversation and he knows that he can't do it with the younger generation if he goes to the Araki well. So he has to try to make this as streamlined as possible. I don't know. But it's a fascinating decision for him to make, for sure.
Yeah.
I just wonder if it was deliberate, going back to that idea of, okay, let's tame this a little bit to make it more mainstream. I am projecting. I have no idea if that was his intent or not, but it certainly feels that way.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could be. I mean, if you look at every single character, except probably for Apple, they're all kind of horrible in their own ways. So,
Yeah.
and again, I don't want to say that as like a get out of jail free card, like, oh, they're above reproach because they're all terrible. But I do kind of wonder if that is the point. Like, oh, I'm giving you these trope filled characters and these problematic depictions because everybody in this is terrible and in some way. But yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because that is a very, very, very valid criticism.
Yeah, that's very fair. I will say though, Mason Gooding is very funny and charming, even if
He
tropey.
is. Yes,
He's very
yes.
funny though.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, that is I Want Your Sex from Gregg Araki. I would definitely, despite those tropes, very much recommend this movie. I had a ride
I
with
would
this.
too.
I had a great time. Really loved it a lot, and cannot say enough about Olivia Wilde and Cooper Hoffman. They are
So
terrific
good.
together, very committed in their performances.
Yes.
I love how commanding Wilde is here. Again, she's had a tremendous year. And while I think The Invite is one of the best directed movies of the year, I still hold to that. I'm with you in the sense that I very much prefer her performance here, just in terms of performance exclusively.
Yes.
Like her direction, top 5 for me of the year, but her performance in this, I would say, is top 5 for me so far this year on the female side. Like she is tremendous in this.
Yeah.
And she's having quite the year so far. She's very, very, for as good as her directing is in The Invite, that's her performance in this film.
Yes. I know. I feel bad saying this, but I've always been a little underwhelmed by her performances. Like they're fine. They're okay. This makes me, I feel like I need to reevaluate everything. Like that's how good this performance is and what a command she has of the screen and of her body in this film and her physicality, kind of, and her line delivery, kind of everything just is really incredible here. She's so good in this.
Yeah. Fearless, completely unpredictable. I loved it. Loved what she does here. And I'm with you. I think Cooper Hoffman is great. He's very much showing that he's one of the better ones of his generation as well right now. Really coming into his own in a great way that I love. So yeah, there's kind of like this puppy dog banality to him that I think is sublime.
Yes.
It's very, very good.
Very well said.
All right. Well, if you agree or disagree with anything we had to say here, you can leave a comment below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit us up social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. You can always email us in sessionfilm@gmail.com. All right. We have a review for Spider-Man, brand new day that is up and available right now. You can go and check that out. We went pretty long in that conversation, but it was a great time. Definitely urge people to go and give that one a listen. And then episode 699, we talk about our top 5 movies of 1985 and some more Spider-Man box office talk. So you can go and give that one a listen as well. And new Chasing the Gold. Be sure to check out Chasing the Gold this week as well. All right, with that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast.